Good morning, everyone. This is the first day of our home gardening session. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Give me a thumbs up if I'm audible. Yes?
Yes, yes.
Good. Okay. Uh, we'll slowly try to introduce ourselves. I'm sure most of us we know each other for now. Uh, we'll ask Vijaya where she's from.
Hyderabad.
Hyderabad. Okay.
Gandipil.
Okay, great. So, actually, I just wanted to quickly start the presentation because we have a lot to cover. So, what I'll do is I'll just have this on recording so that if people can join later on, they can do so, and we can not miss out on the things. So, just give me a second. So this course is more than anything. It's about understanding the natural resources, something that we are aloofing, I think, and we need to connect back to, at least in the sense of knowing when we know something and it's we have gratitude for it, then we're able to appreciate it more in our lives. And the departing from it is happening for many of various reasons, like technological developments, lack of education.
Radha,
uh, yes,
Radha,
we have we have any questions? I
Radha.
request everyone to be on mute, please. Those of you who are joining us again, welcome, and we are starting the presentation so that we cannot lose time. I was saying that we need to connect back to the natural resources. We have been afar from it for very many reasons, and we'll not go into those reasons. We are here for one reason, and that is to connect back to our roots in essence. So, in short, what I would like to say is that we are part of us are made of dirt. There's so many songs written in this in the past. For example, there are devotional songs also saying the same, that ek muट्ठी की माटी है हम लोग, है ना? And how true is that? If we actually even see it in the language of science, we are seeing that 70 to 80% of our body structure is water, and the rest is just a piece of dirt, a cluster of dirt. So, home gardening is focusing on a lot of aspects, including spiritual aspects of knowing the five elements and knowing the cycles. And it's my privilege and honor to tell you all this through stories and through visuals and through videos. And I'm sure you'll have a great time affiliating with the same. So we'll start with our objectives, what we will learn. This is broken down in the 5 day course. Like all this will be learned in the 5 days, and you'll get to have some sort of notes in between in the group, so you'll able to connect well. We'll have sharings of videos and pictures also to represent what we have learned throughout the course. So we'll just keep you updating on the same. It's just like a an interactive thing. You can also send in the group, we will be also sending to you, and learning will happen as we progress ourselves through the journey. So, first of all, we'll get to know today understanding the needs of the plant, that is the sunlight, the air, and the water. So, the basic part of gardening, that is this today's workshop will have, is understanding sunlight and water. So, this is the most important part of the and most crucial part of the whole course. So, this is almost going to take the whole day of today. That means the whole hour. And I like to focus on these three things because uh, all of them are free actually, and yet all of them are not provided adequately or properly to the plants. So we're going to speak in terms of plantations, we're going to speak in terms of farming, and then we'll come back to gardening. So you'll have a holistic picture of how the thing got misunderstood somewhere, and how it was being done in the forests and in the past, how it used to happen automatically, so that what you can do is create a miniaturization of the same in your home by understanding the bigger laws, the how the nature works in its own uh, vastness that is out there. So that's why it's really important to get to know all these three factors, how they interact with each other. And it's going to be the crucialest part of this whole workshop. So I advise everyone to take their notes if they want to, You can have even kids, if they're able to join this session, this is a great learning experience going to be for them also. And without further ado, we will start with the first topic. You can just go through this. I'll show you this slide every time we start and how we have covered each and every aspect. So let me just read through it just for formality. The second thing you will learn is about the soil types. There's so many soil types: sandy soil, loamy soil, clay soil, and within that, there are so many nutrients within those soils. So we need to understand that also, and the type of seeds that we need to buy. So what happens is when we are buying the seeds, there are hybrid seeds, there are selective seeds, and all these differentiate. They are genetically modified seeds, so we need to understand what kind of seeds we buy and the implications of the same, or at least where and how they started out to be. So this is also important part of the gardening that we are going to do, especially if doing the vegetables gardening. So it's really important to know where the seeds are coming from. After that, we'll go to the conditions that are required for the plant growth. For example, there is humidity levels, there's a sunlight, how much sunlight it should need, and a lot of conditions that are there in the micro level at the root systems. So we need to understand that also, the conditions and the type of fertilizers that we'll be using. Most of the fertilizers that we'll be making is home-based fertilizers. We're never going to use the packets that we get from the shops. The reason is farming or gardening is the most easiest and the most natural way of existing. Uh, Everything started out as plants before, and then it evolved to animals and then the human beings. So we need to understand that plant life was there naturally, and through the medium of the microorganisms and the fungi and the algae and all this, they develop the soil, and we'll get to know, to learn how to interact with that. After that, we'll get to understand what are weeds, why do weeds happen. I'll give you a very quick definition of the weeds. What happens is when the soil has nutrients but also is depleted of nutrients, in the sense it doesn't have water, or it has a lot of sunlight, so the weeds grow out, protecting the microorganisms below, and that's how the weeds come out. So if you understand this simple phenomena, that the weeds come to balance the effect of the harsh elements, then you'll also understand that, okay, there's no need to put a weedicide in your farm or your gardens. You just need to improve the quality of your soil, and the weeds will go away. So that's another great thing that you'll learn also with us. Microorganisms. Oh my God, this I think will take almost a day and a half, like 1.5 hours, more than that, because microorganisms are the crucialest part of our existence. Even we are made of more than 90% of microorganisms. Can you believe it? We have more microorganisms inside our body than we have cells. So this is going to be the great day. I think it'll be the second or third day. Let's see when we're going to approach that. Creepers and crawlers. So creepers are, or you can say climbers. Most of the vegetables we grow in our garden are vines. So what happens with vines is that you are able to get advantage of the height factor. So vines are something that they do not need heavy, structures. So they just climbing on something that is already existing. So climbers and vines and creepers are the ones that are just catching on to something with their tentacles and climbing up like a small child, just like that, laddering themselves with the help of some other support. So we'll understand how to create this support systems. We'll understand how and what you can grow in this. Mostly it's guards, be it ivy guards, bitter guards, bottle guards. So these are the kind of things that we can grow with the uh, creepers and climbers. Crawlers, you can see, for example, you can go with watermelons, musk melons. You have the pumpkin there. So that's the crawlers, which just goes at the ground level, and it just spreads itself out like that. Okay, and then the trees, of course. What kind of tree you should have if you have enough space for that, and how it benefits also, especially in creation of compost, and how you're going to get fertilizer naturally if you have a tree with you. I mean, in your university or in your garden. And then gray water harvesting and composting. these go hand in hand, how we can recycle our waste, and then how we can recycle our water also. So this is another important aspect of gardening. We need to use the resources that are there adequately and efficiently, because that's what nature does. And we'll get to learn all these things. Like a simple example would be, just place a basin, when you're washing the dal or anything like that, and you collect that water and just pour it out in the garden. So the garden will actually get good nutrients from that water. So this is a simple way of grey water harvesting, and a lot of many other ways of doing it. We'll discuss that. Understanding the importance of balance, especially when it comes to insects. So we covered this yesterday, the orientation also. There's a lot of insects that are there out there. Most of them are beneficial. We don't know that how they are benefiting us. And a simple example I gave yesterday was of the mosquito. If we are bitten by the mosquito enough, we'll be creating an immune system response that is very quick compared to the ones who are never bitten by a mosquito or are in a very healthy environment. And then once they get bitten by a mosquito, you'll see a very big red dark circle there. So there's a lot of fighting happening there. A lot of red blood cells are cluttering up and trying to repair the damage, and then the white cells are coming in and dying and trying to kill the virus that's happening there. But someone who is from the farm and has been bitten by mosquitoes enough times, he'll just have a small, not even you'll not be able to see the spot. So this is the way the same thing happens with the plants. If you baby a plant too much, by babying I mean giving it water, giving it fertilizer, giving it everything. So what happens, the plant actually doesn't develop the immune response. Even they have the immune response, they don't have this way of awaying the pests. So the pests come and just eat up that plant. And that is obviously actually one way of understanding survival of the fittest. So we'll get to know how you can make your plants strong enough so that they survive this kind of attacks from the insects and the microorganisms that are harmful to them. Okay, we are, yeah. So the last topic that we'll cover is the types of gardens and plants that we need to plant. So, most probably this is on Friday. We'll do a practical workout of how to make earth buckets. That's the most ingenuine thing I've seen done, at least in the sense of plants that are away from the earth. So if you're growing something, I would really advise you to stick with the ground. But if you are away from the ground, or if you are living on a high rise building or something like that, I would advise you to connect with earth buckets. That's another way of connecting your plant at your small spaces. And it's very efficient in giving humus and storing the water, excess water also. So we'll cover that. There are flower gardens and rock gardens and 3D gardens and window farms. We're also covering that. Window farms and window gardens are another way of using your windows, and how you can grow some small herbs like coriander or fenugreek seeds and something like that. And you can just harvest the leaves just from the windows. It's a really good design. Okay, I'll just stop sharing for 2 seconds and get back into video mode. Everybody's with me. Anybody has any sort of question that would want to ask before we start? Okay. So one can begin to reshape the landscape with a single flower. Now, this quote was very deep to me, in the sense that you don't need to have a big plot of land or a big farm. You just start to change the landscape with a single flower. So we shared the link of the hummingbird, and this is the group's name, in fact, of how we can be the change that we are seeking. Somewhere down the road, we are going to face a lot of chaos in the sense of food insecurity, water shortages, and all these kind of things. And indirectly, if we do not act, big farmers and big fertilizer companies and big food processing companies, they're going to come in and they're going to take over the place. So it's all about decentralization. And one of the reasons that I want to do this course is to make central all the points that are there outside and differentiate it, divide it amongst the cities at least. So when we get to know a factory that produces food, it's centralized, and then it has distributing channels It takes in the raw materials and then it distributes the channels, so if we look at a tree, even it just has a central trunk, but then the leaves are so diverse and out there in the foliage, just creating energy for the whole tree. So we are not focusing on even looking at how the nature works, and we are just going about doing our own things our own way, and nature has the paths laid down so easily for us. Even a single leaf, if you will see, is intrinsically designed to deliver nutrients and gather the most energy in the most efficient way. So yes, this is me with some harvesting of ridge guards. This is just one ridge guard plant, and if you give it enough space to climb, and if you have good nutrients at the soil level at the bottom, this is the way it goes up. This is the first story that I'm standing on, so it means that it's just going up and it goes up to the second story. So this is how powerful the climbing of the tree is. And it just goes up, and you just keep on harvesting from the balcony. You can harvest it if you have a long stick with a clipper on. You can harvest it even on the sides of the house. So apart from this, of course, you get the temperature difference. The vines control the temperature of the house, especially if you're living in a hot deserted area like we do. And uh, I actually just realized I've not introduced myself. So this is the type of eagerness that I want to share and start with the right thing. So I'll just say that we are from Kutch, and Kutch is a very deserted land. You might have heard of the White Run of Kutch. Amitabh Bachchan was the one who was sponsoring that a few months or years ago. So that's where we are, basically, just near the White Desert. It's about 2 hours drive from here. So really hot all year round. Uh, and this is the kind of harvest that you can get from there. So this, yeah. uh, this is the first of the slides that you will find importance, and I'll give it importance because we have been existing as the last species that is sort of claiming itself as intelligent. And I would like to differ with that, because when you say that you're intelligent, you are taking in everything. And that's how you're told to be intelligent. If you are dividing and segregating yourself, if you have storehouses, have you ever seen animal collect food for the next day? Have you seen cows collecting food for the next day? Have you ever seen camels? Maybe they will store it in their own body. That's another thing. But we as people, we are collecting, and in the form that is now exhausting the earth's resources. So for example, I'll give you a simple example, is that we have money right now that even if we die today, it might not be able to reach out to the right places after we die. So it's like we are having storehouses, bandar and bandar of heaps and heaps of cash, but we don't know what to do with it. And when you look at a cow, it is just gathering that much for the day to chew, and it's just lying and it's doing its own work, but we never get to have enough. And the simple reason of this is the reason that human beings collect. It's because the lack of trust in themselves that tomorrow will take care of itself, or it's in the lack of the self that it will be able to survive tomorrow. So when you look at a rich person and he's going around with his big cars and big, big houses and all these things, just try to look at it a different perspective now and see that there is some sort of lack, and that lack is being fulfilled by the collection that is making, or the greatness or the grandness that he's creating with his wealth, or with his process of absorbing with businesses and with all this kind of things. You need to be prosperous, but you don't to be filthy rich. There's a difference between being prosperous and being filthy rich. There's an expression, I am filthy rich. That's how most of us are targeting, and leaving the countries, and going out of the country and getting uh, mugged there, and this kind of things happening. Let's just get back to gardening, and these stories will keep on going on. So I find it very deep within me that young life and young people are leaving this country just for the sake of finding a good place and a good way to earn money. So our important back to topic, our important factor is that we need to understand how we connect with the matter, and that's the five elements basically. How we connect with the plants and how we connect with the animals, because as we discussed yesterday, plants take in matter. This is they take in the water and they take in the soil and then they take in the sunshine and they convert it into fertilizer, making room for other better plants for tomorrow. And then the plants intrinsically feed the animals also, which in turn again collect it and connect it and convert with it and make manure. So they add microorganisms to that, and they also make it fertile, more fertile. So the human beings come in, and as we know, all of us know, we probably take more than we give back. We have never given back to matter, have we? I mean, we never recharge the water wells, we never recharge the oil wells after depleting them. We never give back to the plants what they need. We just take their wood or maybe we take their fruit and then just cut off the plant and put it in the soil back again. So we need to understand the cyclicity of everything, the cyclic nature of existence. And our existence depends highly on the word coexistence. So we'll be touching on that word a lot, many times. And yeah, so human beings and their choices have resulted in the imbalances that we see today, and right choices will make us have the right results. So, if we are facing the world today as it is, then we might have made the wrong choices in the past, because the past is the representation of the future or today that it is. So if we don't change the present, then the future will be the same or even worse. So we need to realize that and be responsible for that. So this slide is to show how each and every one of us are responsible for the well-beings of plants and matter and animals, and we need to play our part. Be it small as it is, we still need to play our part. Why do we need to do organic gardening? So, first of all, everything we know about organic gardening, it's natural. And when we had nature with us, we know that it tastes better, it has high nutrient levels, free from toxins. This factor is not understood so well, but when we look at food poisoning, in the sense, there's a movie called Poison on the Platter. We'll be sharing it in the group. And I highly urge you to watch it with your kids and understand and see how we are serving poison on the platter of the food that we are consuming today. So, staying in charge of your food and where it's coming from, and how, at least having some say in it by consuming organic food that you're producing from your garden, is a really not only just an important part, but now it's an existential threat. Like if we don't fix this problem and keep on consuming the toxins, we will be having damaged livers and damaged eyes and eyesights and all these things. And it's really sad to see that. So free from toxins, and brain and body growth is boosted. No artificial colors are there when we're eating organic. Not exposed to gas ripening. We are not aware of this, but most of the time when you see the color yellow, that color is showing you the decay form of a fruit. It's not a ripened fruit. Most of the bananas, for example, when you see, just take a look at how the normal banana ripens. It's actually green in color and it's soft from the outside. So I have seen this happening. They need to save on the transport costs. That's why they are cutting the plant or the harvest before the uh, fruit is ripened, and they need to transport it. So they need to collect all and everything at one go. So even if one plant or one tree has the food harvest ready or ripened, they will just cut off all the trees, that has the ripened fruit, and then they just transport the whole fruit on one day. So this is not natural, and this is the way they are saving on transport. And then at the end of the day, they will put it into a gas filled carbide. I'm sure you must have heard of it. And that's how they ripen the fruits. So the yellow color is a very strange and fearful color actually. Bananas, even if they are ripening, they have a slight green, and the ripened banana that is on the tree is different, and it has a taste which is different. Mangoes, if they are ripened, they have a pinkish orange color. So be aware of the yellow color when you see it's the stage of decay. That's the color of decay. Actually, it's not the color of ripening. Organic food, of course, tastes better, reduces our cancer risk. No chemical fertilizers there, lessens the exposure to antibiotics, synthetic hormones, and drugs. Um, this is not understood so well. Get how much farmers are using this in excess just for a better harvest. But the ninth point is the one that is actually creating abnormalities in the kids also, because when they are using these drugs and uptaking the harvest in bigger quantities, the micronutrients are not being absorbed by the roots, so we will lose out on those micronutrients. And at the end of the day, what happens is children don't develop their organs well. They have lack of absorption power in the intestines, and this ultimately leads to organ failures, or at least organ degenerative diseases. So we need to focus on how to avoid that. um, Tried and tested, of course, that's the 10th point, which is very easy. Like millions of years of tried and testing has been done on what the fruits and vegetables that we see, which are naturally occurring in your place. So that's obviously a win-win when it comes to choosing the right thing to eat. The five elements. Okay. What is the importance of the sun, the air, and the water? So we are going to connect it with these five elements today. And when we see, if the sun is not there, the plant will wilt and it will die out one day. If the air is not there, the plant will also wilt and die out. And if the water is not there, it will wilt out. So these experiments have been done in most, I think, if not the ninth class, the 10th class. So we are obviously aware of these things, how the five elements are helping the plant to grow and to stay flourishing. So we need to understand how we can use those in our favor for the plant. So we need to understand the balance of all the same. For example, if you would say that what is the point of growing a plant, and just let's limit its root structure. Let's make a bonsai. So this is not a natural way of the plant to grow. I have seen a lot of videos how they make the bonsai, and most of them come up with the fact that they just cut on the roots that are developing down there, especially the main roots, and that's how the tree stays small. So of course, I am going against aesthetics. It's a good thing to have in your living room, but at the end of the day, what you're doing is just limiting the growth of a plant. And what happens with that is that the plant actually suffering. You will not hear this, you will not feel this, but the plant is trying to get its roots out, trying to grow out. The space is limited, it's confined. As soon as it develops the new roots, we're cutting the roots off. So to me, if you ask personally, I would not go for this kind of bonsai or anything like that, because it's a way of limiting what the fullness of the plant is. So if you say even a potted plant, for example, now potted plants is because of the limitations that we have, that we are keeping it in the pots. But what if we had another way of diverting it? What if we had a bigger pot, or what if we understood the root structure of that plant? So that's what you're going to cover. If you see a tree, it has more roots. If you see a tomato plant, it has lesser roots. So there we can use the pots there somewhere to use the gardening. But when you see that you need to grow a whole tree inside a pot and make it a bonsai, that's something like you are doing that extreme part. So everything in gardening is about natural and staying natural. And this is one picture I wanted to show you, that we might have flowers in the living room, but at the end of the day, the plant is trying its best to become the biggest it can, and we are trying to stop it. So that's one thing that I wanted to show you. Another way is people have this commercialized now. You can grow your own vegetables, and if you ask me, the LED light. This is the LED lights that you see on the in the center there, and it's growing a plant there, and of course it's connected to the wall socket as you can see. So, and again, not natural, obviously, aesthetically appealing. I mean, the leaves might be even delicious, but the sun's rays have more wavelengths. I'll just give you an example. This is the amount of wavelengths that we see from the sun. Yeah. And between the 2%, I mean, the visible spectrum is just the 47% that you can see, but the spectrum from the sun, that is 100%. So you are actually providing the plant with just 47% of the light by giving it through LED lights. So what the sun can give and what you are giving artificial, there's a big vast difference, and we don't know what will happen due to that. So some sort of microorganisms can flourish in that, making it toxic. Some sort of viruses can flourish in that, making it toxic. And just as the way the tobacco leaf was very famous in the parts of the United States before it was linked with cancer, everybody started growing tobacco, and the cigarette companies started to promote the cigarettes, and men and even women started to smoke. And then suddenly it was discovered that it was linked with cancer. And by that time, even the farmers who were growing the tobacco leaves had to leave it because nobody was there to harvest their produce. And in fact, the farmers who were already growing the tobacco leaves, their own children started to die with cancer. That's when the people started to understand there's something going wrong here. So sometimes we don't know the natural resources and how they're working. And if we give out, if we can see in this picture again, the sunlight is so famously giving its 100%. And when we limit it with this, we don't know what will happen. We don't know what kind of viruses we are allowing, because not only not only giving viruses freedom to grow, but also in efficiently killing them or controlling them is also necessary. So the sun does that through UV lights and all the kind of infrared lights that are thrown off on the from the sun, and the thermal energy also. So LED lights never go, do not emit heat as much. In fact, they don't even emit any heat. So when you grow plants in LED light, yeah, there is no thermal energy going in the plant also. So this is very uh, uncharted territory, if we can put it that way. We don't know what will happen because of this kind of indoor plantations. Okay. So in short, what the meaning of the slide is, let's stay natural, let's stay focused on the way the nature wants to grow, and let's understand nature first. And then after that, maybe we can do some sort of tricks and some bending of the rules. But most of the time, if we do it at a clinical level, the way that we are doing and seeing today, especially when it comes to genetically modified plants and seeds, that's going, I think, a step far from the natural way it's doing. So we are all familiar with this photosynthesis, how it happens, where the plant takes up nutrients, converts the carbon dioxide in the air and converts it to nitrites and nitrates, and the plant takes it up and converts into foliage. The flower grows there, and then the oxygen is given off as a byproduct. So this is photosynthesis. This is all we all learned this when we were in high school. There's no going back. There's no point going back and reinventing the wheel. We need to just understand that the main three parts are taking place in here. The sun is there, the soil is there, the water is there, the air is there. So these are the main things that we need to understand how the plant grows and flourishes. It needs those three things, and the fourth is the earth to do the photosynthesis properly. Okay, what is the sun? The sun is the most important part of every element that existed. In fact, all of us are made of stardust. So any element that was forged had been forged in the past sun. So what we are made of are atoms, and atoms are forged inside a sun. So when the sun dies out, There's a lot of gravitational pull that happens. So the sun is made of hydrogen. It has just one electron that is moving around it. And then when it gives off its heat and converts itself into helium, and then when those stars go supernova, when this is extreme amount of gravity, the gravitation pull that happens at the end of a dying star, the all the matter collapses inside in between, and we have a giant super explosion that's called a supernova, and that creates all the elements that there, and the best and the highest element that we can see happening there is platinum and gold. So the biggest star explosions have happened in the past, and they have allowed us to get all the nutrients that we see in earth today. So earth was just a big fireball, a lot of explosions happening, and just, I mean, immense amount of volcanic eruptions and comets coming and bombarding the earth, and then this forged the earth, and slowly the fungi and the bacteria, and they started to decompose into making to the soil. We covered that yesterday by showing you how the rock formations of the earth convert to soil by weathering means, and by fungi, and by the bacteria that are there present in the earth's surface. So the sun purifies the rest of the elements and gives its new life. Now we can see that in the water cycle, we can see that in the nitrogen cycle, the sun is the important part of the plant growth. We need to have adequate sunlight. Uh, we should be having a way to give sunlight to the plants by making it stay on the east side of of the house, or at least have an hour or 2 hours of sunlight. This will not only have the plant gets its enough dosage of creating food for itself, but will also allow the plant to uh, kill off all the negative bacteria and viruses that are going to kill the plant anyways. So you need to place the plant or at least 2 to 3 hours outside in the sun, or if possible you can just plant your potted plants in the outside in the sun, so that they get this energy, so that they kill off the all negative bacteria and the viruses that are accumulated and multiplied in the night. So uh, we have this also same phenomena happening with our body. We need vitamin D, right? So most of us are closed up in the offices. We used to work in the farms before. I mean, 100 200 years ago we were all farmers somewhere. At least our generations of the past were farmers, some way or the other linked with the outside world. But now today we are closed, the offices. What happens when you're closed in the office? Lack of sunlight. Well, lack of sunlight, no vitamin D, you have brittle bones, you have neurotoxins developing in your body, viruses happening in your body. So it's a good idea to stay in the sun also for like half an hour, maybe in the morning sunlight. That's a good way of practicing also gardening at that time also. So the sun purifies the rest of the elements. That's an important part of the lesson to learn from here. Sunlight in moderation will create much foliage. Now, this means that when the plant does not get enough sunlight, it will try to grow a lot of leaves. If it has good amount of nutrition down there, it will grow a lot of leaves and no fruits. So you need to understand that the plant is making fruit when it's celebrating and making good energy. So what is energy for the plant? Glucose. So how does it make glucose? It needs photosynthesis to happen. So what was photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is conversion of water and air and sunlight and converted to glucose. So the abundance of glucose depicts the amount of fruits that you can get. So if there is no photosynthesis happening, you will have a lot of foliage. The tree or the plant will create a lot of leaves trying to capture the sunlight from there, this, there, left, right, and center, but there'll be no fruits happening. So we need to understand this sentence very carefully. Sunlight in moderation will create much foliage. Sunlight in abundance, this is the opposite now. Sunlight in abundance will make the plant wilt. So if there's a lot of sunlight, this is what will happen. The plant will try to survive. It will down its leaves so that the sun does not take away a lot of its water supply and water uptake. So this is the nature's way of fixing that. But we need to keep it into moderation. So extreme sunlight is also not needed. Okay, you will ask me, how do you control the sunlight? Sunlight is so hard to catch or hard to cover. So the simplest solution to that is maybe you have a sort of vine going on top of the plants that you have down there. So what we have in our garden is that there are vines growing and they're covering the whole house. And then inside, between where the vines are growing and the sun is hitting directly, you can have even a terrace garden there where the top of the top of the terrace is covered with vines. And then below the vines, you're growing all this kind of tomatoes and potatoes and all that you are wanting to grow. And not so much abundance, but an adequate supply of sunlight. So if I'll say in Hindi, धूप है वो छन छन के आती है. So the sunlight is being coming and weaving through the leaves, and then that's how it hits the plant below. So that's how you can moderate the sunlight. Um, the last sentence here is really important. The root system of the plant gets the best sort of activity going between the temperatures of 15 degrees to 28 degrees. So if it is below that, the roots stop to grow and stop to go deep within. And if it's too high also, it starts to um, delay the process of growing any sort of fruit or vegetables, and it just sort of starts to shrink itself, trying to conserve the water. And then suddenly what happens, the plant just dies. Suddenly you see the plant is turning yellow or brown. So we need to understand the root structure, and the root system should not go beyond 28 degrees and not go up below 15 degrees. So you would ask me, how is that possible in the winter? What can we do? So in the winter, what you can do is that you can actually cover the foliage, the roots with the foliage, and that's what actually happens. The leaves fall down, and then they cover all the areas that the leaves have fallen down, and the soil is covered with these leaves. And what happens, the microorganisms come up and start eating the leaves. And when the microorganisms are eating the leaves and they're converting it into energy, they are emitting the heat. So you're understanding how the plant survives. It's shedding the leaves during the winter, preparing itself for the sunny days that are going to come. Yeah. And also at the same time, the leaves covering the soil gives food for the microorganisms. So the microorganisms now are eating the leaves, and then they're converting into heat energy, and the whole top layer of the soil stays a little bit warm than it is necessary in the winter. So the winter times, when the leaves are falling down, you need to add to that action. What you can do is, in the garden, if you have a garden in the winter times, just fill up that garden with the leaves. So that will activate the microorganisms and bacteria to generate a small amount of heat as they're eating away and multiplying in that uh, composting waste and leaves that have fallen down. So you need to understand that this is called being a sathidar. Sathidar is a accomplished friend. If you are considering yourself a nature friendly person, you need to understand the cycles and how the nature works, and then you keep on adding to that cycle. Yes, we have somebody asking a question, maybe. Yes.
Yeah, Janet, like we have got grass, we are just 3 months back we put the grass and it's still, it's just growing. So
Uh-huh.
can we put the leaves on that also?
Yeah. If you have grass, I am assuming that you mean it's weeds, some sort of a weed that is happening there, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So if you
Yes.
have grass growing, you need to understand that there is a lack of a particular nutrient, and the water level is also low in that area. So what the plant is trying to do, what the nature is trying to do,
No,
it's
I'm asking you that if
Mhm.
I want to grow the grass,
Okay,
like
okay,
in
got it.
winters it stop growing, it's I've got a garden with grass also.
Right, right, right.
So yeah, that way I'm asking.
Okay, okay, yes. So when you convert, when you put layers of leaves there, what will happen is the microorganisms will start activating themselves. They'll start working. So definitely, if you think that grass is growing, you want to grow the grass there, you need to feed the soil first. And right now, what is happening is that if it is a barren land, right? I'm assuming it's a barrel land right now.
No, actually, I am making a garden with the
Uh,
grass also.
okay.
So I've already grown the grass or sown the grass there, but I never knew all these. I have put many fertilizers with
Right.
worms and all of,
Right.
but I don't know how much organic it is.
Uh-huh.
But now in winters it will stop growing because it's not covered fully.
Right.
It will stop growing because of the cold weather. So should I put the leaves on that so that it can grow fully,
I,
in winters?
I will also tell. I will also like to add to that leaves. You can also add a bio slurry. Now, how do you make that bio slurry? That will be coming
Yeah.
in third day. So, bio
Okay.
slurry is basically a magnitude of microorganisms that are made from cow dung, sugar, or jaggery, and then some sort of atta that is made from they say chickpeas or something like that. You just mix that atta with gourd, jaggery, and water, and cow dung and cow urine, and then you mix that, and then you make that slurry. And you keep that slurry for like 5 to 7 days, depending on the temperature. I think if it's in winter, you can need to keep it for 10 days. And then what happens is microorganisms multiply in abundance in that liquid. And then you spread that liquid around with water. So now the
Okay.
microorganisms are there activating the soil, and you'll have abundance of growth happening there. Be it even in
Okay.
grass or even in vegetables or fruits. So this will
Okay.
cover on the, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the fourth day. It's called biofertilizers, and we need to do that also with the leaves. So when you spread this biofertilizer on top of the leaves, that will promote the growth happening. Because right now, what is happening? That low temperatures are killing all the sort of activity to activate. Everything is just trying to survive, and they don't know how to do it because the temperature is so low. So we need to increase the heat also, and we need to feed the microorganisms also. And one way of doing it is we cover it with leaves, and then we apply the bio fertilizer, and then we just wait and just water it and just wait. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Janak, we also have an area at the backyard which there are like huge trees on the sides.
Right.
Therefore, there is no direct sunlight coming to that area. We tried growing grass
Right.
last year over there. It did not come.
Right.
So I'll click the picture and I'll also share it with you. So
Right.
I just want to know how we can grow grass, or if that
Mhm.
area is good to grow vegetables. That also I'd be interested to do.
Mhm.
So you can
Okay.
guide us on that.
Yeah, yeah. What we need to understand is that even if you have trees on the sides, that will be like the perching ground for the birds. So this is one unique thing that people don't understand is that when we have trees on the edges, the birds will be able to sit on it, look at your garden, see a small caterpillar or a small insect that is not beneficial there, or maybe that is in abundance. Like if there's a lot of caterpillars in your garden, what will that bird do? It'll come and eat on it. It'll come and eat on it and go and sit on the bird on the tree, and then it'll start eating there. So when you have trees, you should be blessed. You should be counting your blessings. Oh wow, we have perching grounds, natural perching grounds for the birds to sit. You know i i just remembered a story that I used to tell the class 8 kids, that when the British came to India, we had a lot of trees in our farms. We used to grow the guavas and the mangoes and all this kind of chiku, and all this was in our gardens. And then when the British came, they started putting the tax on us. And the farmers, they didn't have any other way to pay back the taxes, but they started to pay it big by growing wheat. And then they used to take the harvest of the wheat, and maybe they used to tax it through the wheat, and then they kept on increasing the taxes. So what happens? They needed to cut down the trees and create more land for them to grow, because they had brought a law which was the Land Acquisition Act. So that means all the land of India was under the rule of the British Empire at that time. So the farmers could not expand their land. They used to have the land that they had, and then they had to grow in that land that was supposedly given to them by ancestral. And before that, we just used to cultivate any land that we found. We just used to take, okay, I'll be growing in here, and nobody used to complain. But when the British came, they put this law, and then they started to keep these limitations on the people. So we cut down the trees. The point I'm trying to make is we cut down the trees to get a better harvest. And even today, farmers don't have trees at the edges. that there used to before. So there is no organic waste that is happening. All the leaves they used to fall down there. The roots were being converted into fertilizer making mechanisms. They used to go deep into the earth, convert the bedrock into nutrients, and the foliage used to come up. The nutrients used to come up in the foliage, in the leaves, and then the leaves came and fell down on the surface of the earth. And they used to collect the leaves and then convert it into compost and with cow dung and all this, or at least cut the leaves and then feed it to the animals, and then that created fertilizer for them. So we've forgotten all these practices. So we need to get back into this. So how do we get back to this? We need to understand that every time the sun comes up, there is a time that the sun comes at the noon, exactly almost at the top. So if you say that will the trees hinder the sunlight, my answer would be no, because most of the time, even if in winter, there is a slight angle as the sun comes up, but around 11 to 2, around 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., we have the sun that is at the highest point, even in winter. And that amount of sun energy that comes on the plant, be it is, it's not, there's no need for the trees to go away. That's what I'm trying to say. So you can definitely grow the vegetables there if you want. Most of the vegetables that require the highest amount of sunlight are tomatoes. Like they need 3 to 4 hours of sunlight because that's the amount of energy they need to store. And tomatoes are, full of sun's energy, at least in the sense of there's a lot of heat, the red prana, as you can say, since we are healers also. So we can say this is the red prana there. So that's why it needs the most amount of sun's energy. But apart from that, there's a lot of fruits and vegetables that we can grow, and definitely they will grow in the lower sunlight. Yeah. So this is a small video that I'd like to show you how the seasons happens. So basically the Earth's elliptical orbit and its axial tilt. Now, what does these two factors mean? We'll just play this small video and I'll not waste a lot of time in this because I just want to make you understand how the Earth is rotating around the sun and how the seasons are happening.
While the axial tilt is the primary cause of seasons on the Earth, the distance from the Sun, which changes throughout the year because of the elliptical shape of the Earth's orbit, contributes a small bit of temperature variations throughout the year as well. When the axis is aligned so it points towards the Sun during perihelion, one hemisphere will have a greater difference between the seasons, while the other hemisphere will have milder seasons. The hemisphere, which is in summer at perihelion, will receive much of the corresponding increase in solar radiation. But that same hemisphere will be in winter at aphelion and have a colder winter. The other hemisphere will have a relatively warmer winter and cooler summer. When the Earth's axis is aligned such that aphelion and perihelion occur near the equinoxes, the northern and southern hemisphere will have similar contrast in the seasons. At present, perihelion occurs during the southern hemisphere's summer.
When we are seeing this part of the Earth is nearer to the sun at this point, so you can see the distance between the sun here and the distance went from the sun here to here. Are you seeing the distance? Are you able to see my cursor also?
Yes.
Yes. So this distance is more here, and this tilt of the Earth, as you can see, it's tilted. So this southern hemisphere here is going to get the summer part of the heat, and the top part, which is a little bit away, will get the winter part of it. And when the Earth moves here, this same part which was cold here, the same part which was colder because it is the distance from here to here is more. Now suddenly that distance is lesser here compared to the one which is bottom from here to here. So this part will be cold now. When it was hot here, you can see there's a lesser distance. This is hot here, and now that part is away from the sun. This part is away from the sun compared to this part on top of here. So because of this temperature variations happen, because of this the seasons happen, and There's no need to get too much excited about this, but basically I wanted to show you that the Earth's orbit, as we have been taught in the books, is not exactly right. They show you it's a very perfect circle that we are making, and that the Earth is moving around the sun in a perfect circle. We are actually on an elliptical orbit. Yeah. So that is the reasons why we have the seasons. So yes, that's just one point that we need to understand how the seasons are happening. Okay. So we'll just shift back to, yeah. But the air part of the whole presentation is trying to say that plants need air, but what do they need from the air? Carbon dioxide obviously is one part of it, but most of the nitrogen, and I'm saying this as a very crucial part of the plant's growth, is nitrogen. Now, we don't know what nitrogen is. We've not seen it in solid form, so we don't know it. But 70%, of air is actually just nitrogen, and the plant actually needs nitrogen to survive. So, this is a small video that we need to understand how nitrogen plays a part in it, and we'll see the video first, and then we'll try to discuss on it.
Can we really relish the cocoa beans just like chocolates? Of course not. Similarly, there are so many organisms which require a few important constituents, but they are not present in the utilizable form. One such example is that of nitrogen. Yes, atmospheric nitrogen is extremely important for the proper functioning of cells. The main reason for that is that proteins are made up of amino acids, which are in turn made up of nitrogen molecules. Also, many other compounds important for the cell are made up of nitrogen. So, are we saying that nitrogen is required by all organisms? Of course, yes. But we can't really breathe nitrogen from the air. So, this problem will be fixed by the plants for us. Yes, they will synthesize compounds having nitrogen. And when we consume plants, the nitrogen will enter our body. Simple, isn't it? Actually not. Problem of nitrogen consumption by animals got solved. But what about the problem of nitrogen consumption by plants? Nitrogen is present in abundance in the atmosphere. However, the divalent molecule has a very strong triple bond shared between its atoms, and it's very difficult to break this bond. It requires extremely high amounts of energy. One instance occurring naturally is the lightning process, which helps break the two atoms apart. But that doesn't always help. So the problem still exists. Even plants cannot take in nitrogen directly from the air. So now who will solve this problem? We don't need to worry. Plants also seek the help of some other organisms, the microorganisms. Yes, several bacteria and blue-green algae are a part of this activity. This important process is referred to as nitrogen fixation. What do we exactly mean by this? The term fixation refers to converting an element into its usable form. So, are we saying that these organisms convert nitrogen into utilizable forms? Absolutely. These organisms are referred to as nitrogen-fixing organisms. These nitrogen fixers present in soil convert the atmospheric nitrogen molecules into compounds like nitrates, nitrites, and ammonium. These compounds are then taken up by the roots of the plants. And then the plants uses these compounds to synthesize their own proteins. Consumption of these plants by animals and humans then gets the nitrogen into the animal kingdom. This is how the process of nitrogen fixation occurs. Let me quickly recap what we learned. Humans need nitrogen, but they can't take it directly from the atmosphere. Hence, they get it from the plants. But even plants can't take it directly from the atmosphere. This is where the nitrogen-fixing organisms come into the picture. They convert the atmospheric nitrogen into consumable compounds for the plants. And then animals consume the plants to get this nitrogen. But wait, If all the nitrogen in the atmosphere is gradually fixed by these microbes and used by plants and us, then it would deplete, right? What if it gets entirely depleted? What will happen then? How will organisms survive? Guess what? Nature, as always, holds a secret solution to this. And that secret is the nitrogen cycle. Yes, the nitrogen in the atmosphere is brought into the biological world where it is utilized. But it is also sent back to the atmosphere by some means. This process of cyclic flow of nitrogen from the atmosphere to the living world and back into the atmosphere is called as the nitrogen cycle. But how does this cycle actually flow? Let's have a look. As we know, the atmospheric nitrogen is fixed in two major ways. Firstly, by the rhizobium bacteria living in root nodules of the leguminous plants, and secondly, by nitrogen-fixing bacteria and blue-green algae in the soil. The first type involves fixing of nitrogen exclusively for legumes. The roots of these plants have nodules that are small bead-like structures. These nodules are the homes for a group of nitrogen-fixing bacteria called the rhizobium. The roots can thus directly get benefited due to the activity of these bacteria. But what about the non-leguminous plants? We don't need to worry. We have the second method. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the soil and the blue-green algae help in converting the atmospheric nitrogen into usable compounds. These compounds will be absorbed by the plants and utilized further. Now, when animals consume these plants, the nitrogen enters their body. Now, how will the nitrogen get back into the atmosphere from here? Definitely not by breathing. Let me give you a hint.
Okay, so basically the rhizobium bacteria are inside the legumes. Now, what this means is that whenever you pull out a plant and you will see small bead-like structures, so you'll understand that there is the rhizobium bacteria has actually infected the root structure of the plant, and now it is having a symbiosis relationship with it, where the plant is giving the bacteria glucose, and the bacteria are converting the atmospheric nitrogen into nitrites and nitrates. So you need to understand this very crucial point of what the air supply of the whole plant is. So when we say that the plant needs air, it's actually requiring a hell lot of nitrogen. Now, when we see that nitrogen in atmosphere is 70%, why don't we just take it from the atmosphere? It needs it to soluble form. It needs it in a way that we need, like a roti, we cannot consume wheat as it is. We need to convert it into a dough and then make chapatis and then roast it on the the pan and then convert it into a roti, and now we'll be able to eat the roti. So similarly, plants need the nitrogen in a soluble form. Right now it's in an insoluble form, which is the atmospheric nitrogen. And then to convert it into soluble form, we have the rhizobium bacteria, which converts it into legumes, and the other bacteria, which converts it, the blue-green algae converts it into nitrates in the trees. So let me just finish the video and we'll just continue from there.
Have you come across the process of decomposition? Yes, that's the answer to this question. When these organisms die, their bodies get buried in the soil. Now here the decomposers are all set into the action. The decomposers help to break down the various compounds containing nitrogen. So what will be the result? Yes, it results in releasing the nitrogen trapped inside the organism's body back into the soil. Amazing, isn't it? But wait, here's something more interesting. The soil also has another category of bacteria called the denitrifying bacteria. What could they be useful for? As the name says, they will help release the nitrogen molecules from these compounds present in soil into the atmosphere. Yes, these denitrifying bacteria sometimes convert the available nitrogen-containing compounds from the soil to release molecular nitrogen. That means they do not really wait for the decomposers to complete the process. Whenever these denitrifying bacteria encounter the nitrogen containing compounds, they simply convert it and release molecular nitrogen. A keen look at the complete process gives us an understanding that the entire process flows in a cyclic manner. This is how several types of bacteria help in ecologically important processes like nitrogen fixation.
Very crucial part of the presentation, how the nitrogen cycle happens. When the nitrogen is required by the plants, it is taken up into the uh, root systems, and it taken up as the nutrients from the plants by nitrates and nitrites, and this is conversion of the atmospheric nitrogen into nitrites and nitrates. And then that same level of nitrates and nitrites, if it's in an abundance, what will happen is they will actually stop converting it to nitrates, and they will actually start decomposing it. So are you able to see the balancing act that the bacteria are doing? When the amount of nitrates and nitrites is saturated, the denitrifying bacteria starts to activate, and they convert the saturated nitrogen back into atmospheric nitrogen. So this is how the nature cycles the way it's true. It just gives a presence, and this means that when you there is no adequate amount which is maximum or minimum, it just keeps it at a level that is required. If the plants are consuming and creating more of foliage and all this kind of fruits that it creating, the nitrifying bacteria stop converting into atmospheric nitrogen, and the rhizobium bacteria and the blue gillian algae convert the atmospheric nitrogen into nitrites. And once the soil is in abundant supply of nitrates and nitrites, the denitrifying bacteria starts to activate. So these all type of bacteria and microorganisms, they don't have to be told. They're just doing it by themselves on their own, keeping it at an optimum saturated level, you know. And this is called the normalizing way of life, the way it is just to keep it normal for millions and millions of years to come. They're just working and they're doing their part. Yesterday we talked about the termites. I'll just take a minute here. We are actually over 10 minutes ahead, so we'll just stop here for today. So let's just have some sort of questions if there anybody has. And I'd like to just conclude with one story that I had yesterday, that when the termite stops its work, the whole surface of the earth will be full of logs and wood and dead fallen trees. But if the termite is doing its work properly, it's keeping the earth, out of all these dead trees that are falling down. So it's really important of every microorganism and insect to do their work, and that they are doing their part and playing their part really well. It's just that we don't understand their rules, and that's where the problem and havoc happens. So if there are any questions, I can take them now. I don't want to extend it too much because I know that it'll take long, but we'll take some questions if there are. Okay. So just to summarize, just one more minute I'll take so that we can just stay on the same page. Um, what we started out was with the needs of the plant, and we started out how we need to understand the air, the sun, and the water. So when we understand the role of a human being with matter, when we understand the role of a human being with a plant, when we understand the role of the human being with animals, that's when the celebration factor comes in. And I'd like to end this presentation by keeping in mind when something is in celebration, you know what happens? Have you ever seen a child who is happy? It'll keep on moving in circles. It'll just keep on moving in circles. It just feels so happy, it just wants to move in circles. And if you see the planet, it's moving around in circles. If you see the sun itself is moving in a circle, in a very elliptical way. And if you see the whole solar system, it's moving in the Milky Way in a circle. So this is the kind of inheritance that we have. We have the cyclic implementations in our own body, in all systems. The water cycle is there, the air cycle is there. The sea is moving in circles. It has its own way of moving. The wind is moving, and the solar system is moving, and the Milky Way is moving in its own spiral, in its own circles, and all this thing. The moon is moving around the earth, and kids, when they're happy, they're also moving in circles. So are we getting the hint where the celebration needs to happen? We need to understand where our function is, and to complete the circle, we need to understand where and how to fix that problem that is happening today. There's the disconnection that has happened, and the disconnection, as I started with the presentation, is with the greed factor. We don't know if we will be able to fill our stomachs tomorrow, and that's why we have this gathering and storing and keeping it into banks and keeping it to property and gold and all these kind of things. If I ask you, if 100 people trust you, will you be a happy person? Or if 100 people don't trust you and treat you oddly, or if they say that you're a thief or a miserly person, how would you feel? Which is the better part? So 100 people who are trusting you is worth it. Living your life with 100 people trusting you compared to the 100 people not trusting you. So somewhere down the line, we need to understand the balance where we need to leave a lot of things to nature, try to understand the cyclicity of nature, and try to find the balance within ourselves, so that we can be balanced human beings outside, and for the outside role that we have to play in this infinite cosmos. So I'll end my presentation now, and we hope to meet again tomorrow at the same day. And I hope it was a wonderful journey for all of us. Yes. Thank you. Let's meet
Thank you
tomorrow.
so
Yes. Namaste. Namaste.